If we do that, and in that village we have Islam in the form of the Jama'ah, it must be one Jama'ah, and we have the one Amir, and we have Sami'ana wa Ata'ana, listening and obeying, and we give the pledge to obey, the bay'ah, and then the Amir enforces the deen on the members of the Jama'ah. Then when you die, you can die with the hope in your heart that I'm not dying in Jahiliyyah. But if I remain in downtown Sydney, living in my home, without any Jama'ah, without any Amir, without any pledge, an obligation to listen and obey, like a flock of sheep scattered all over without any shepherd, when I die with the possibility that I am not dying in Islam, I'm dying a death of Jahiliyyah. And so we say, go and buy land where land is cheap, where there's water, and build a Muslim village. But the first thing that we have about the structure of that village is that it must be one Jama'ah. So it cannot be a Salafi village, or a Deobandi village, or a Barelvi village, or a Naqshbandi village, or a Tabligh Jamaat village. Can you help me with some more? It must be a Muslim village, where all Muslims can come together. And they must all come together as one Jama'ah with one Amir. Whoever is the Amir, you must pledge your obedience to him. How do you establish your Amir? Well, there are different mechanisms. We can discuss that. It's there in my book, One Jamaat, One Amir. But what kind of Islam are we going to have in this village? Will it be Salafi version, or will it be Deobandi version, or will it be Tabligh Jamaat version, Wahhabi version? Which one? A big question. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, I leave behind me two things. So long as you hold on to them, you'll never go astray. The Book of Allah and my Sunnah. Whatever lies outside of the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, whatever is interpretation, do not bring it into the public life of the village. That's your private life. The Book of Allah and the Sunnah as universally accepted is the basis of the public life of the village. And so the halaqah of zikr of a Sufi order, we say, take it into your private life. Do not bring it into the public life. Do not bring it into the masjid, so you will have no cause for fitna, conflict between each other. But if somebody wants to invade into your private life to declare bid'ah and haram, now he is creating fitna. So we throw him out of that village faster than Federal Express. You're not allowed in this village. Go and live in Sydney. The Quran and the Sunnah is the basis for the public life of the village and the masjid. My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, wrote before he died a masterpiece, which is perhaps the best book on Islam ever written in the English language. The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society, in 2 volumes. Volume 2 in particular, he's done for us the homework. It's like a manual of instructions. How do you establish Islam in a Muslim village or in the state? And so that book will form an indispensable assistance or guide as we seek to establish the Muslim village. That's insofar as structure is concerned. Of course, the village will have to implement the law. But it will implement the law only to the extent that the members of the Jama'ah agree to submit to the law. So if the law is a public flogging, and the Amir is ready to inflict the flogging, you say, no, I don't want to be flogged. We don't have the authority to flog you. So what we'll have to do is to say to you, well, you can no longer live in this village. So you'll have to leave. If you submit to the law willingly, then we flog you. In this way, we'll be able to enforce the Sharia. And so we're going to have a qadi or a judge, so matters go before him. And we're going to have a mufti who will give legal opinions. All of these things are going to be revived on a miniature scale in the Muslim village that we used to have once upon a time. My book, One Jamaat, One Amir, at the back of it you will see this structure of the village. Now then, we move on. In Surah Al-Kahf we have the warning that in the age of Dajjal, food is going to be corrupted. Remember the young man, after they'd slept for 300 years, they woke up, they're very hungry. So they sent one young man to go and buy some food. But they gave him instructions. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَذْكَى تَعَامٍ. Go and search for that food which is purest. Purest. A warning of the corruption of food. The Muslim village already recognizes that food is corrupted today. What we are feeding our children is corrupted food. Food which is produced with chemical fertilizers. You don't know how many times they spray those plants with chemicals. If you only knew, you wouldn't eat it. Food which is produced with the use of chemical fertilizers. Food which is produced from genetically modified seeds. And there is so much fear in Europe, of all places, Europe, of genetically modified food. They don't want it from America. Europeans. Africa. A great drama recently from Zambia and Zimbabwe on allowing genetically modified corn to enter into the country. Fear of the havoc it can do to the soil. Well, we are concerned about genetically modified food from another perspective. Because Gog and Magog, when Allah destroys them, the manner in which they are destroyed very clearly depicts a collapse of the immune system. That collapse of the immune system can only come about if the immune system is no longer being sustained. Food no longer functions, therefore, medicinally. The only way we can test this hypothesis, and I've asked the medical doctors in South Africa to do it, is if we have a case study of a particular group, control group, which is not allowed to eat genetically modified food for a certain amount of time. And then you compare the immune system in this group with the immune system of those who are eating the genetically modified food. The hormones in milk, hormones in meat and so on. So the Muslim village will produce its own food, produce its own milk and meat, and it will be the purest. So we need to allocate a substantial part of the village land to farming. Food crops and dairy farming. Since this will produce the best food, the surplus production can now be marketed and it will fetch the highest prices. This forms the agricultural backbone of the village economy. Because make no mistake about it, if you want this village to survive, the village must have an economy. Agriculture, therefore, forms the backbone of the economy of the village. If the village is to produce those who will be growing up as Muslims, the village must attend to its own education. And so we must establish our own schools. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the first command in the Quran, Iqra, read. And instead of reading the Quran as the beginning of education in Islam, we send our children to the schools which were established by the godless world. And the godless world does an excellent job of producing a child who is no longer growing straight but growing bent. This is why the government of Singapore was so anxious to get the Muslim child from the earliest age. And after the government of Singapore has had the child under its control for about 5 years or so, now you can have the child. See? And so we have our own schools in the Muslim village. And the Quran must form the very foundation of the educational system. There are no such thing as secular subjects. I don't know where that term came from. Secular subjects and religious subjects? What's that? What's the definition of secular? The definition of secular is that from which the sacred has been taken out. Huh? When you take the sacred out, now you get secular. Taking the sacred out means taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out. Now you get secular. It's haram for a Muslim to pursue education in that foolish way. When you're studying physics, you're not studying a secular subject. There's physics in the Quran. There's biology in the Quran. How you can call them secular subjects? Wallahu ambatakum minal ardi nabata. Surah An-Nuh. And Allah has caused you to grow forth from the earth like trees and plants. So if you want to know about yourself, you better study botany. No? All of this is in the Quran. So how can you pursue the knowledge of these subjects and declare that this is secular knowledge? It is not secular knowledge. It is sacred knowledge, whether it is physics or chemistry or biology or botany or zoology or mathematics. It is not secular, it is sacred. They make it secular in their schools because they take the sacred out. How then can we send our child, put our child in an ocean filled with sharks, when Allah has said in the Quran, Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Protect yourself and protect your wives and protect your children from the fire. And you put your child in an ocean filled with sharks. And when the child is bitten up, and at the age of 14 or 15, a drug addict, now you come to us and you're weeping. Too late. And so the Muslim village has its own educational system. But what I have found in the United States, overwhelming majority of the Muslim schools, Islamic schools in the United States, when you go and look at the children in these schools, the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they play, Jazakallah, the way they behave, they are in no essential way different from Uncle Sam's children. The baseball hat backwards, yeah? Baseball hat backwards, the top piece without the sleeve, the blue jeans, and the baggy trousers now, and the trousers has to go down 1 foot lower than your feet. So it has to be crumpled up to come up. Any design, any fashion Uncle Sam comes up with, even if it fits a monkey, they follow. Is this what the Islamic school is supposed to produce? If you take a trip to the United States and Canada and you see the product of the Islamic schools, you will realize they don't have a hope of success. You